YouTube world, and thank you for joining me, Kim, for another Anima-saurus interview. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by a really good friend of mine, Bez. Thanks for joining me, Bez.
Thanks for having me.
For everyone who's never met you before, can you just give a quick introduction of who you are and where you work?
Sure. I was born in Iran, currently living in Vancouver, Canada, and we work together in Sydney. I'm directing. Funny enough, I've worked in 3D my entire life, but for the last 2 years, I've been directing on the Peanut series for Apple Plus. Um, Everybody's got this like a plus in front of it. It's like Disney Plus, Apple Plus, but yeah, I really just started as a 3D animator, and then I progressed to layout and previs, where I spent, um, a couple of years supervising in that area, which led me to Sydney, where I did the layout and previs on Lego Batman. Originally, I was a Ninjago that went into total rewrites, and then they asked me to take over Batman. And along the way, I've got to work at Pixar Canada. I was the head of the same departments there. And at some point, I just transitioned to directing, did some 3D directing. Then I came to Sydney, worked there for a while, spent some time in development, and I decided to throw my hat in for 2D directing, and they said yes, and I've been doing that for about 2 years, 2.5 years. So that's been kind of a good overall experience in different things.
Yeah, it's quite a career kind of compacted into all of about 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, people get bored. I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
la, 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 this is this. If you want the credentials, go and look.
Yeah, that's it. That's what LinkedIn's for. It's just like, oh yeah, cool, check that out.
Yeah.
Long list of stuff. but yeah, I mean that was one thing which I got was really interesting for me was that yeah you did transition going you said from 3D you started off in 3D and you spent all your time in 3D right up until quite recently, which was quite fascinating that you'd then go you know what I want to get into 2D. What sort of piqued your interest in getting into 2D?
Well, for me, it was like working at sort of a feature like high-end feature quality is really exciting, and I wanted to get back into directing, but obviously, unless you've directed at that level, you're not going to get like a feature film like co-directorial credit right away. So I wanted something that I could just gain a lot more experience, just get more comfortable and learn a lot of the like tools of the trade. And at that point, I was looking at it and I thought, Peanuts is an incredible property, and it's something that Wild Brain Studios, where I'm working currently, has the rights to. So like nobody else can actually make Peanuts anymore outside of the studio, unless they partner with a studio. So you can't get like the old animated the animated feature, the like Blue Sky did a while back. So when I looked at the project, I thought that's a beautiful project. If I was ever going to do 2D, that would be a really wonderful opportunity to kind of get the experience and then have that be another option if I ever want to work on 2D shows. And I sort of had this inkling that I thought 2D can be difficult. Sorry, TV can be difficult in a sense that your development time can be really short. So you don't have time sometimes to like develop your characters and the story and the world. But looking at Peanuts, I'm like, well, you got Schultz that spent 50, 60 years developing it. So you've got like 60 years of development behind it. The characters are thought out, and they weren't interested in like revamping him and all of a sudden having him like do hip hop and break dance and graffiti. It was like, okay, Peanuts is Peanuts. We want to stay true to it. It's something that a lot of people love around the world. And I thought, you know what, I think if I pick this project, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be drawn to it because of how much they love it. So I think a lot of really skilled people are going to come out of the woodworks and just be like, I just want to be a part of Peanuts. So it was sort of like a holistic choice. I was like, there's tons of research on it, and it's developed really well. And the people that are, when I met with the people, they seemed really, Rob Boutelier, which is our supervising director, he was drawing like Snoopy since he was a little kid. So I was like, this guy, if this fails, he's gonna like, lose his fucking mind. So that ended up just being kind of, and a lot of that actually came to true in the sense of the talent that came to it. Like we've got, board artists that are working on features. We had the head of the Blue Sky movie, the story
Oh, yeah.
team. He's done a couple of our boards for us. We've had the head of story for Spider Verse has done a couple of boards for us. Our head of music is like incredible composer. So there's people that like play at a feature level that just came and say, it's Peanuts. We love it and we want to be a part of it. Um, and yeah, I came at it in a way that, because I directed and I learned so much in Sydney and a couple of other jobs I had, I was just really honest with them. I said, look, my drawing is like crap, so I'm not going to sit there and storyboard and do and draw over poses for you guys, but I've developed all these other skills along the way that I think together I'll be able to succeed in this job. And I was just really forefront. I was like, there's going to be things that I'm not going to be able to understand, or I'll be new to, but I've developed enough skills that I think I can be of an asset to you guys. And they thought so as well. And then we just hit the freaking ground running. And the first season of Snoopy in Space, we learned a lot. We made a decent show, but we really took everything we learned from that and just leveled it up to like another 10%, no, 10 times, not 10% for the Snoopy Show. So,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna see that progression coming up, which is like we're really excited about it. We were lucky we got a couple of nominations, but I think we're really going to kick ass, and the team is like really gelled because you need time, and the
Yeah.
animation team's doing amazing work, and the design's just like so good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
that time thing. Like you say, when you get a team working together, like one season for something is really nice to have one season. You kind of just start working out your kinks, but
Yeah.
actually getting that time working together, you find out people's strengths, you find out, how people work together and they actually start
Yeah.
meshing together. And that's then, by the second and third season is when you start actually seeing magic.
Yeah, because what happens is you're gonna work out the kinks out of the pipe, and then also like you're gonna understand the characters, and you're gonna have a better like pose library, and all of these things apply to 2D as well, where we'll have better cycles and reuse and this and this and this. So what I can do is like. I got sent the shot today, and like the shrug on Snoopy wasn't really great because they're really hard to do because they don't really have like shoulders. So you kind of have to do like meh, like this rather than this. Then I was like, oh, it's not really working. And then I could just reference this other shot. I was like, we did it really well in there. Can you just do that? So it kind of gets to a point that you've got enough momentum behind you and everybody sort of understands that you don't kind of have to explain yourself over and over again and then problem solve over and over again. You're like, we figured out some of the things, and then like you're saying, you can kind of really think about how to gel it. And then once you're out of the survival phase of just trying to get the content done on time, then you're getting into like, what do I want it to be? Okay, how do I improve it? And then there's a thing I always wanted to do that I couldn't do, but now I can kind of poke at it and note on it and then try to get it there. So
Yep.
yeah, it's, and features go through that, but then you just have so much more time and money to sort of develop and make those mistakes, and eventually go, we kind of know what it is, and then you're still figuring out. And then you've been on that where you said that sometimes we went back and then fixed things in the beginning that we had done that don't match with where the movie ended up. So it's like, oh, the beginning doesn't link up to the end, now we got to go back as the characters have sort of changed and kind of dial that in. But
Yeah. Yeah, the development process, that's one thing I love about animation is,
so good.
yeah,
Oh,
you can
live
iterate
for
the
it.
change on it because, they've grown with you or you've grown with them. You go, okay, what he did back there doesn't really, like you said, doesn't match up in story arc for the character arc from this point to this
Yeah.
point. So you have to go back and change it, which is good. I guess as a director, you really get a great overview of the story and you've really got control about how you see that story arc happening.
Yeah, and our episodes are 7 minutes, and there's a thing about the arc and the story which is really different. Where I can, it's like you actually have to change your mindset when you go from like a feature down to something which is like 7 minutes. And I directed like things that were 12 minutes before, but from 7 minutes to 12 minutes is a huge difference. And from 12 minutes to a 22-minute episode I'd done is very different, because the storytelling and the time and space you have for emotion is different. And what I mean is, like, if you and I talk for 7 minutes, it's going to be a very different conversation if we talk for 22 minutes versus if we talk for 90 minutes, right? So it's also really different when you come from feature, because in the beginning, like, everything I was thinking was like too deep and heavy in a way that I was like trying to make every moment so emotional and just get so much more depth out of it. Where my supervising director was just sort of like, Snoopy just, he just wants that candy. Like, that's like, there isn't any like Batman who's lost his father and is having like deep insecurities about life and existence and family. It was like, I was like, right. Right. Okay, so this is just in a different category of emotion. So that's actually another thing where you talk about story arc, where a feature story arc can be so much bigger and there's so many more layers. When you work on something which is 7 minute, is like there isn't like, there gets something, it works out, and then it breaks apart, and then there's the betrayal part, and then there's like all hell is lost, and then there's the climax of it. It's usually like stuff is okay, and then all of a sudden something bad happens and it resolves by the end. 7 minutes, like,
That's it.
so yeah,
Yeah.
so it becomes really different, and it becomes a really different emotional storytelling that you kind of have to understand, that go like, oh, I get it, this is sort of slapstick, it's heartfelt, but it's very different than a heartfelt of like a 90 minute, like, you know Disney or a Pixar movie, because they've just got time to go to such depth.
Yep.
So there's an arc to who the characters are and who they are and who they've been in their last 50 years trajectory to this moment. But then there's this like little tiny arc of like, where are you going to get them, but where you get them by the end of the episode would pretty much have to be them as who they are,
Yep.
because it's not like you're bleeding into the next episode with their ongoing like
Story. Yeah. So
story.
so everything. Yeah. Everything approaches as they really do end up very much at the same point from the start to the finish. It's just an
Exactly.
adventure on the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like you had a fun day and then you went to sleep and you were okay. Kind of like your kid where he'll wake up and every day he'll be like the same excited version, more or less. It's sort of like that. It's like whatever happened today resets in the morning and then you do the next day.
Yeah, reset storytelling, coming from long form stuff where you've actually got such a deep arc. That reset storytelling. Did it take long for you then to restructure how you approached storytelling then?
It wasn't so much a restructuring. I would say it took me a little bit to sort of understand, and like it was almost like I wanted this like great meal, and more like this is a snack, like it's a 7 minute, you just kind of understand it for what it is. That didn't take me a while. What took me a bit longer to sort of understand, and this was another reason I chose to come into 2D for TV, is that I saw a weakness in CG, and I want to say my own thought process of coming from CG is that uh CG TV shows sometimes, more often than not, are not really that funny. And I mean that in a sense that they're really funny from banter and characters and acting, but they're not funny from a slapstick point of view, because sometimes slapstick is too involved with like props and things just happening, and that costs money, right? You're not going to like have a character just smash a computer and another character's head as a joke in a CG TV show, because you're like, okay, now we gotta have to build that TV, and then we're gonna have to like need the dynamic stimulation, blah 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 blah. It just has a lot of cost. And I looked back at sort of my career, and even Pixar does really funny stuff, but they don't really do like slapstick funny. And it was something that I saw when we were on Lego that I was like, when I saw Lego and I saw Lego Batman, it was just sort of like McKay, our director's sensibility, that there was something really silly about it that he had gotten from working in Robot Chicken, that you could really see that banter and that really like silliness. That I realized it was almost like a muscle I hadn't developed, because I could do kind of funny stuff, but not like it was just like I didn't understand slapstick. So when I came into 2D, it was not to say I understand I can come up with the best gags. I've been able to you know, support the show and come up with something, but just really get to see some guys that are really good at it, and just see that they just come from that slapstick 2D mentality, and just know like when something isn't hitting, have an idea, go like bring the best ones in and be like, can we brainstorm a really good gag in here? Because for this momentum, I kind of understand now what the story is and what it really needs in order to be like a 7 minute cartoon. But this is where I need the support. So that took me a little bit longer to sort of understand that what made a 7 minute entertaining, engaging cartoon that needed to be funny. So that's where that's where I really had to settle in on the idea of storytelling and how to engage people for this what's the word, for this medium, in the sense of the format, I should say, of the time format that we're working in.
Ah, cool. I just want to go back to the another point which you made before. When you said you approached through the interview process, you said you brought a set of skills, which I'm guessing
Hmm.
are soft skills. What sort of skills were you kind of referring to that you said you could bring along? Because I know skills, like you said, technicality. 2D is very different to 3D from a technical point of view. But
Of course.
what sort of soft skills were you kind of bringing along that you thought were worthwhile?
Yeah, well, I had worked in layout and previs for so long that I understand, a sequence, and a 7 minute episode is ultimately like a sequence. And it was like, if you're gonna have me at a certain point in animation, sometimes I was working on like, I would have 20 episodes and they're all in different parts, like one's in script, one's in this and one's in that. So there's a part of me going, look, I've worked on a movie where I've had like, God knows how many sequences in different part of the production, or all of them being layout and previs at the same time. So it's like I can handle the load. That's okay. And I've worked on so many high end stuff that I understand how to put the pieces together. And I have had to work out so many story issues in the layout previs because we've had directors like McKay that just didn't feel comfortable with storyboards. So it was like I've worked in that, and I've had enough of different kinds of experiences. I've directed layout and previs. I've edited a little bit myself on some shows that I had to, and I've animated. So it was like I feel like I've got a holistic and I'd even like storyboarded at one point on a project. So it was like, look, I've done all of these pieces. I understand how to do them all. If anything, yes, 2D is going to have certain things that are hard, but it's just going to be way more simple than 3D. And it is like our entire 2D pipeline is probably as complicated as a single department in 3D. Like that's just sort of like the volume. And there's so much of the what's going on with the process is that processors are kind of bleeding from different like 2D to 3D and 3D to 2D. I'll give you an example. Like I went to a meeting. I was sitting down and everybody was talking about this was like a year ago. They were talking about everything, and they were trying to figure out what to do with their animation library and applying the poses and whatnot. And I was listening to that, and I thought it was really funny because they were talking about something that we sorted out in 3D like 5 to 10 years ago. That I was like, and I made it a suggestion. I was like, no, you want to do it like this. And they all looked at me like, how do you know? Like you haven't even animated in 2D ever. But I was like, it's the same principle because you're talking about applying animation onto a rig. Now, in this case, it's just a much more simplified rig, even though it has its own challenges. But I could sort of extrapolate and go like, I get these pieces and I know what this is. So when I looked at directing, I thought, look, I've had to hold my weight at, right next to the director at sort of the, $80 million animated movie. I think I've gotten enough skills at this point that I could just not fall apart and just not have you guys babysit me and then learn the other pieces as we're going through it because there's going to be nuances, right? And
Yeah.
I can just kind of draft between you guys set up the thing, and then eventually you pull out and you drive. And to the point my director doesn't even like he doesn't even sometimes come to the storyboard handoff. My supervising director, like I might sometimes do the handoff myself. I'll edit the first version of the cut myself and I'll just show it to him. I go, listen, this is the problem, this is what I want to fix. We have a discussion about it, and I just bug off and I go and like do all of it and write the notes and hand
Yep.
out. Even the animation has come to a point that he'll just literally will watch it for when the episode's done for like 30 minutes with me. He'll say, I think this and this didn't work. And then I spend like 7 hours just reviewing it with the animation directors and going like nitpicking to death. But it was getting back to your question, sir, with Jan ran about, it was basically understanding. I had been observing directors for a really long time and seeing what are their strengths and weaknesses. And I looked at myself and I said, okay, I can do this, and this I have to develop in. I need to develop my understanding of design. I'm not really going to know how you guys do BG layouts and this and this. So, but I've got enough of the circle that this gap that's missing in there, it's not going to make me like, crash and burn.
Yep.
And they were like, okay. And yeah, that was sort of my selling point to them when they bought it. So
beautiful. All right, thank you so much for joining me for just another quick chat with our beautiful industry experts. Until the next time, this is Kim signing off for Anima-saurus.